Roll call. Charles Shoemaker,
Here.
Joetta Gaines,
Present.
Becky Boland,
Here.
Sandra Flowers,
Present.
Robert Leary,
Here.
Thomas Phelan,
Here.
Robert Power,
Here.
all present, pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this point is a moment of silence for Joseph T. Donovan of Newport, who passed away Sunday, November 3rd at the Village House Nursing Home in Newport. After his service in the Navy, Mr. Donovan became a member of the Carpenters Union, working for local contractors and Newport Roofing for 25 years. In 1951, he joined the Newport Fire Department, serving the city for 27 years. Mr. Donovan leaves behind his daughter Karen Gallagher, science teacher at Thompson Middle School. Thank you. This is the time for public comment. There was somebody who didn't get to the sign in. Oh, Kathleen Bradley. Thank you, Kathleen. Up at the podium, dear.
I'm Kathleen Bradley. I'm a fourth grade teacher at Pell, and I just thought it would be nice to hear what the students are saying about their new school. I'm sure that you've talked to lots of people in the community, and I know I have a good friend that's a pediatrician, and she said she hears nothing but really positive things from her patients and parents. And as a fourth grade teacher, one of the things about the school is it is very, very large, so we don't see other grades, but the fourth grade teachers are very, very happy that we have that collaboration. It's so much easier than being in all these separate buildings. But I thought I'd have my fourth grade teachers write letters to Mr. and Mrs. Newport and talk about the school, and I won't read all of them, but I thought you would enjoy hearing what some of them have to say. So it's Dear Mr. and Mrs. Newport, thank you so much for this special new school. I really appreciate what you did for us. I myself mostly like the smart board because we get to draw and play games on it. And did you know that all the specials have their very own rooms? And the library, you should see the library. You paid for this big time. By any chance, I was wondering if you could make a pool. Well, I'm just happy that you made this school for us, so once again, thank you. And that's from Yana. Dear Mr. and Mrs. Newport, thank you for the gym, because at our old school we had to use the cafeteria, but it was okay. The water fountain in the classroom is really smart of you. I mean, they think that you've all designed the school. I like the colorful walls, they're really soothing. Dear Mr. and Mrs. Newport, thank you for the new school. I love the new smart boards. They're easier than using the computers. I love the colorful walls. The library is so big and neat and amazing. All those books. I love the desks and chairs. They're nice, new, shiny. By the way, I also love the cafeteria. Each class has its very own table. Again, I thank you for our brand new school. And I'll just read one more here. Thank you so much for our new school. I love it a lot. The one thing I like is the playground. It is so much more fun and bigger than my old one at Coggeshall. I also like my new classroom. It is big and neat, very colorful walls and floors, and it's quiet. So for a fourth grader to comment on how quiet a schoolroom is pretty remarkable. I like that all the specials have their very own room instead of having to share a room. I like the smart boards. They are fun to learn on and play on. Thank you. I could not ask for a better school. Sincerely, a Pell champion. So I'll make copies for all of you, but they are really wonderful, and I thought you should hear them.
Thank you for sharing.
Alrighty. Thank you.
Very good. We have a proclamation with, I guess, two
Yeah, one goes to TAN and one goes to Council 94. We have representatives from either group. Okay.
American Education Week proclamation. Whereas public education is the backbone of democracy, providing young people with the tools they need to maintain our nation's precious values of freedom, civility, and equality. And whereas by equipping young Americans with both practical skills and broader intellectual abilities, schools give them hope for and access to a productive future. And whereas public education employees, be the educators, substitute educators, custodians, teachers, school administrators, bus drivers, clerical workers, food service professionals, health and student service workers, or librarians, work tirelessly to serve our children and community with care and professionalism. And whereas public schools are the foundation of neighborhoods and communities, bringing together adults and children, educators and volunteers, business leaders and elected officials in a common purpose. Now therefore, I, Charles P. Shoemaker Jr., serving as chairperson of the Newport School Committee, Newport, Rhode Island, do hereby proclaim November 18th to 2013 as the 92nd annual observance of the American Education Week. Signed this 12th day of November. So we have two plaques, one for Tan and one for Council 94.
Kathy Radcliffe. Yep. And Nona Colleen Harms.
Thank you very much.
Under certificates of achievement, I would just like to remind everybody that this Sunday, the Democratic Committee is holding an afternoon dinner, and they're honoring Sandra Flowers. Congratulations, Sandra.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm one of the honorees.
Well, it's all right.
You're the one who knows best.
Oh, aren't you nice?
Next item is student activities, student council update. Allison?
Hey everyone. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Allison. I'm the president of Student Council. And we just finished up Spirit Week and Pep Rally, which was fun and stressful at the same time. But yeah, that's basically it. I'm thinking about doing some fundraisers probably for maybe Martin Luther King Center just with the food pantry, and then probably some other things throughout the year. But right now it's just getting back into the swing of things after Spirit Week. I call it Spirit Week coma because I'm like up every night that week. But yeah, that's basically it.
Thank you. Mrs. Bowen?
Yeah, I just wanted to tell an Allison Thompson story. The night of homecoming, Allison had found a cell phone downtown Newport, and she tried to call the people and let them know that, that she had found it. And they responded while she was at the homecoming dance. And Allison got permission, left the dance, and went and returned the cell phone to someone, and I just want to say that just shows what our students are made of and what a great, example you set. And those people who from New York who really needed their phone back didn't know where Rogers was, so she left and went and gave it to them. So
That's sweet.
very nice.
That's great.
That's what I can.
Yeah.
Oh, they were from New York. Mr. Brennan didn't believe me. I was like, I know this sounds so weird. And it was like an older guy, and like, can I tell the story? Yeah. Oh. It was like an older guy, and it was in the middle of the dance, and I had just like dropped people off, and he was like, please, like I need it right now. And I was like, oh my goodness, I don't know what to do. I was like, I'm at homecoming. He was like, please. I was like, okay.
How old was that guy?
What's older, 30?
I don't know.
That's what I want to know.
So actually, then I ended up going to the Lee's, and Miss Lee's, were you there? Miss Lee's ended up driving because she didn't want me to miss the dance. Drive and dropped it off for me. And then today, he gave me like a little note with like money in it. It was so cute. I didn't even because it was weeks later, and like Liam handed it to me, and I was like, what is this? And then he was like, oh, it's from the person whose phone you gave, and I was like, oh. But yeah.
That's nice.
That's it.
Okay, we jump to the consent calendar, which has 3 items: approval of minutes, personnel, request for home instruction. Anybody wish to extract any of those items? Okay, I'll entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
Second.
Let's go. Any discussion? Yes, Mrs. Bowen?
Yeah, this is on the request for home instruction. I actually today was really interested in how this whole process works, and I went and tried to check the state law. And there's really not a lot in state
Right.
law.
It's
It's
horrible.
crazy.
Horrible
It's
state.
crazy that what's not in there.
Right.
And so, I'm concerned, like, they don't give you any guidance to the district, and they really don't have any kind of, accountability to it. And so, as a school committee member, it seems bizarre that we're even asked to approve these.
Correct.
Because what do we say, if we don't approve them, the alternative is they can then go to the Commissioner of Education and petition.
Who will approve.
Who will approve them. So there's really, it's something something's not right. And I don't know, like, what we can do as a district too. I just want to make sure that from year to year, we don't lose kids. And I know I told you about a couple that I'm concerned about that we may have been lost in the system, but that we always make sure from year to year that they maybe don't necessarily turn in the paperwork to do them the following year. And are those kids still being educated,
Every year, we take the year's previous students and send the parents a letter telling
try
them
to
they
get
must. This is one thing I think that school committee members and other residents can help out with, because if you see a youngster who's a school-age youngster on the street all the time during the school day, there are ways of figuring out what's going on. And if you know some people who don't seem to be educating their youngsters appropriately, if you confidentially give their names to us, we can make sure that they've been approved. But worse than that, Becky, there is no accountability. At least in New Jersey, the people had to come in and take the standardized tests. They don't even have to do that here. And we have a lot of military families who legitimately do it because they move around so much and it's constant. But it's not all military families, and Wendy does a great job monitoring this, and I think it's a flaw in the law, but the home instruction families have a very strong network and a very strong lobbying group. They come in, they say, this is all we need to give you, here it is, that's enough.
And I think the vast majority do a good job, of homeschooling, but there's just those few that, that may be getting lost in the system, and I'm just concerned about them, and it's a big responsibility when we approve these, and yet, we have no recourse.
Right. Yeah. And you're right, But unless something's done in terms of change in state law, or maybe it's even, some legal aspects that have come down over time as to what can be required. So.
Can we find out if it varies from state to state in that particular, I'm using the word policy, practice probably is better.
Yeah. Well, I know it did vary when I was in New Jersey. We could at least say, okay, we're going to grant this, but here's where we do our standardized testing. Your child needs to come in here to make sure that they're making progress.
Maybe it's time to...
If I may, since I've been around so long, I can remember when that was the policy in Newport. But the home schooling lobby changed that. And I don't think it was just Rhode Island. I'm not sure, but the letters that come from the agency are from, I think they're postmarked,
The
what am I trying
organization
to
that
say?
supports a lot of the homeschooling.
The home address is in D.C. So,
Even the curriculums.
I mean, we can look at it again, but this has been frustrating. We've talked about this before.
I think you would have to take the direction from the state.
Yeah, and I think that's the major issue.
When that came onto me, I was initially, when I came to Newport, I was very aggressive with that. And my aggression got me into the legal hassle with the state, and I ended up losing. And it became apparent that, if I was going to push on each one of these issues, we're going to have to go up to the Department of Ed, we're going to spend time, we're going to end up losing them anyways, because of the way they're set up. And so we're spending administrative time, we're spending legal time, and we were getting nowhere with it. So we just kind of outlined, said, look, here's the form, you fill it out, here's the things you have to hit. Department of Ed said, here's what you have to do. And, and that's where we ended up.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I mean, as Dr. Brody said, almost 60% of these kids are military,
yeah.
and almost half the families are military. So they do this a lot. You know, it's not uncommon, you know, to see that happen in military towns.
But Mrs. Boland she's told me about some cases. We have a very negative incentive in not only just Newport, but probably in the state, and that is, if your child is disabled educationally, parent gets a stipend, an extra stipend. And there are parents who are sitting home very comfortably with this money that they're getting. And so in some cases, there's a negative incentive to keep the kid away from education. They despise education, and they know that if they don't educate the child, they're going to have a disabled child, and they will get a larger stipend from the government. It's a very negative incentive, and I think if there's anything we can do about reversing it, would be great. Okay, it's been moved and seconded for the consent calendar. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We go to action items. Number 1 is policy number 4612. This is Dr. Flowers.
Yep, let's see, now this is the second reading and adoption of the amendment to the interview process and procedures for selection of principals and above. And the,
I was going to move acceptance.
oh, okay.
I did.
Okay, is there a second?
For acceptance.
I'll second that.
Is there a second?
Discussion on this item.
Bobby?
Mr. Chairman, I would ask I'm a fan of always hiring Newport residents, there's no question about that in my mind, but is the same wording in there for Council 94 and for TAN?
But this is only for principals and above.
I know, but in the next policy is the same wording in the next policy. If it's not in the other policy, we're making exceptions for the principals and above, but not for Council 94 and not for teachers. They should have the same,
Supervisors, you mean, in
correct,
94?
they should have the same thing. Why are we putting it in just for them and not for anybody else?
Because this is the only policy we're dealing with, but I think
Yeah.
It's not in your-
what you're saying makes sense, that the language should be consistent
Correct.
for all new hires.
Correct.
Make a note when we come.
We didn't put that in as my practice,
don't
but
know.
No, we just looked at this
I can't,
particular
is not in the policy, Bobby?
I believe not.
No.
I have to check it out.
No, it's not, this is only about that class.
Right, but it's not
Principals
in the
and
other
above.
policy?
I don't know.
I thought it was.
So could we
Wendy?
review the other two, for the other
that-
policy
To make
numbers?
it consistent.
To make it consistent?
So you can-
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And just that the ending of the second paragraph was any and all qualified Newport Public Schools employees and Newport residents shall be granted an interview upon submission of the completed application. And the rest stays the same.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that passes.
Next one.
Temporary suspension
Oh, the
policy number
suspension, yeah.
7100.
Let's see.
7100.
If I have the right one here.
Bobby, you want to
Yes,
address
this is the one.
This is the one that we came up with
Yeah,
last month,
we
and
had,
Tom wanted
at
another
the last
month.
meeting, this policy came up. This is in regards to the effort that we're trying to put together to raise money
Yeah, I wanted to,
for technology at the Pell School. And rather than rework all the language in that policy for a very specific reason, which probably will not come up again for many, many, many years, we would like to just be able to suspend that particular policy for this particular activity. We had it at last month's meeting. I held it off because Mr. Phelan wanted it to have some time to be out there in the public and not just have it come in front of the committee and just suspend it. So I was more than happy to wait another meeting, so we're now here at the second meeting, and I'm proposing again that we suspend the policy for the period of time that we are doing fundraising for the Pell School.
Is that a motion?
It's my motion. My motion is to
second
suspend
it.
the policy for that period of time.
Any discussion on the motion? Yes, Mr. Leary?
Mr. Chairman, so are we suspending the rules of our policy to do this?
We're suspending this particular policy
So-
for the purpose of the activity of raising the funds for the Pell School. Once that activity is ended, this policy goes
that's it.
back into place. The way the policy is written, when you look at it, It was contemplated to name,
Whole school.
a whole school. It was contemplated to go through a whole process. We're in the process of trying to do things like classrooms and spaces within the building. We're not trying to name a facility.
So, again, are we suspending the rules of the policy, or are we just suspending that policy?
Suspending that policy for this particular activity.
So we are suspending the rules of our policy book.
For this particular, no, not
just
the rules
that
of the policy book, this
So
particular policy.
what I'm trying to get to is, I have a major concern. We used to have 3 readings for a policy, and then we now have 2 readings for a policy, and I don't mind that, but we can suspend the rules in a heartbeat with a majority vote. I've always thought, was in there for wording, that it should be a 2/3 vote of a committee to suspend the rules of a policy. So I'm not against what you're doing. Let me be crystal clear about that. I'm not against it.
Yeah.
But I'm against if you change the policy if it's without a 2/3 majority.
Oh, that's not what we're changing.
That's not what we're doing.
We're
No, we
suspending
went through the whole
policy.
procedure.
If we need 3/4 of the, more than the majority, then we'll have to deal with that. If we don't get 5 votes for this, it doesn't fly.
But that's not in our policy, though, so I'm trying to say.
No, that's Robert's Rules of Order.
but
Suspend
it's
the
not-
policy, you
yeah.
need 3/4.
Further discussion? Yes.
Yeah, I just want to state, the only reason I was against it last month and mentioned it is that we suspend policies too easily. So I thought, at least if we do it in second reading or whatever, at least people can think about it and it gets done. But before, we could do it that night, anytime, any meeting, and I thought we just did it too easily. So that's the only reason I was against
This is
that last
now.
week. Yep.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes, all right.
So what,
It passed.
passed it?
Now you got 3 of them together next. 3 policies. School
The
building.
next one is the second reading and adoption of 3 policy amendments, 7500, 7525, and 7550, because they all have a connection. Use of school buildings. The first reading was on October 8th, and it was amended to include language to address Pell School rental fees, and there's various modifications to one of the paragraphs. And primarily, what it does, it would say elementary schools, and now it names the particular school.
So it's,
And
Are we
also
doing
the
these-
rentals.
Are we doing these
as
3, or are you doing all 3 of them
Let's
together?
lump it
Because we-
together.
we-
Yeah, because they were all
Unless somebody
connected.
wishes to
Yeah.
divide it.
Well, because we discussed it at the last meeting,
So it
and
should
I
be all
read
good.
these policies, and it looks like the language that you put in there reflects the changes that each of us requested, including Mr. Leary's request of the 501c3.
And that is mentioned there.
Yes,
too,
I saw
yeah.
that.
Yeah, that's, I'm
And-
just
and it-
going to
It's under one item.
take a
one
breath
re-
and mention that also, yeah.
Yeah, it's under one item, and
Yeah.
the understanding would be that they
I
be,
understand.
otherwise,
Yeah,
if you
'cause it
pick them
says-
apart and do one and then not the other,
So I need
it
a
could
motion
fall
to-
apart.
So, yeah, because so it says, in
Motion
addition,
to approve the item 6.3.
so moved.
second.
Any further discussion?
No, because it says, in addition, for number 7500, the further amendment was as verified by the 501c3 certificate.
Yep.
That clarifies it.
Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item 6.4, policy 5531.
Dr. Booth is here now, and I would like her to come up and just explain very quickly why this policy needs to be enacted.
Well, the reason it needs to be enacted is because the state has told us we need to have a policy for a waiver for the state assessment. And basically, the language of the policy is what was recommended by the state. It doesn't suspend any of the other graduation requirements. It would, it's very specific in what evidence is needed.
and for a waiver. And I think it's pretty clear. I think it says right in the policy that there would be few exceptions. One might be a student who was proficient and in their own language, but couldn't pass the kneecap for that. It could be that they have passed another state assessment in a different state. So there's a number of different ways, but all other graduation requirements have to be met, as well as the 2 attempts at kneecap.
Thank you. Is there a motion to accept?
I move to accept.
Second.
It's over for discussion.
I have a question, maybe Steve can answer it. I heard that part of the problem, our biggest problem is the math in the high school, by far. And it came to my attention the other day that maybe what we should be doing, that unless those kids take algebra, many of them, like that's part of that test when they get up to high school, maybe we should be looking at offering algebra to all the 3s at the school. Now, in the past, we've only done it to the 4s in 8th grade. In other words, getting these kids, as they move up, it's just something to look at so we can get more kids, through what they need to be through to be able to take that test as a junior. And, it was just something we never thought about before, about giving, letting these kids in the section 3s take algebra. So, something to think about.
Mrs. Gaines?
I think we should be offering algebra to all students. I don't believe in just offering it to some. We should be offering algebra in grade 8. And if a kid doesn't pass it in grade 8, they've got grade 9 coming up. But that's a curriculum question. This particular...
True, this is...
The only thing I disagree with here is that a child has to fail twice. I just see no redeeming value in putting a child through that. But this is what the state is
The State
mandating.
Board of Education, Mrs. Gaines?
No, not the state board,
Oh, okay,
the department.
okay. Okay, got it.
The thing is important with this, we have this here right in front of us, and Dr. Booth alluded to it, that there are some fairly tight regulations.
Fairly.
Very tight regulations for a waiver to be granted. And that's an important point right there. It should not be something that's just going to be handed out, and it shouldn't be. Because if you have a student who has really shown achievement and something, because I'll probably say sometimes there's something wrong with the test, but that's just my thought. It could be it. Maybe they can see a whole pattern. Maybe this will lead powers that be to see a pattern of why these things are happening. But it says, like the phrase here, clear evidence. That's the important point. And I think that parents and students alike should understand this is not going to be an easy way out. And it shouldn't be. And also, obviously, the teachers and administrators who would be helping them to go forward on that.
I think as we go forward to the PARC test that will be taken in 14-15, tests individually, Algebra 1, Geometry, and you take that test whenever you take that course.
Oh, great. Much better.
It's not like you took Algebra 1 in 8th grade, and now you're in 11th grade, and you're supposed to remember. So it'll be set up differently, and I'm not sure what the waiver policy will be.
It'll change.
It's a little more logical. Well, yeah.
Interesting, there's an editorial in today's Daily News about PARC.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Leary?
So if we don't ask for a waiver, they have to take the state assessed graduation?
They still have.
They have to
They
take
do
it
take it
twice,
anyhow.
Yeah, we have to.
and fail it twice to request a waiver.
Okay, so why are we asking for the waiver then? If they fail it twice?
The student and parent would ask the
District for,
superintendent,
right.
the Newport for a waiver, showing evidence that they had competency other than the state assessment.
This is for those rare situations where the one size fits all doesn't fit all. So,
I'm that person because I took the kneecap again this year for math. So I'm literally the person everybody's
Okay.
talking about.
so we're here to help you, Allison. There
No,
we
but
go.
honestly, like, I was sitting, like,
Yeah.
it's kind, I don't know. I was sitting in my guidance counselor's office, like, I don't understand. Like, I was like, I don't understand, like, what I, like, for me, it felt like I did something wrong.
Yeah.
Like, it felt like I didn't, like, make up to par, but I'm, like, on the National Honor Society, and, like, I help out, and, like, I do all this stuff, and I'm like, oh, but I can't pass the test. So I think it's definitely something to be put into consideration and something that needs to, because the way that they set it up, like, the kids in my class, at least, we think if you don't pass, we're not graduating.
Yeah.
So, I don't know if like, the waiver is obviously going to help that, but that's my personal perspective.
What does Massachusetts do?
There are
know
waivers
they have
everywhere.
I'm not sure what Massachusetts does, but again, I can tell you what New Jersey did. New Jersey had high-stakes test, and if the youngster didn't pass the test in junior year and didn't pass the test in the first part of his or her senior year, there was what was called an individual assessment, where the supervisor of math and the supervisor of reading would develop an individualized program for this youngster, which they were required to complete, and when they would complete it, they would get their diploma. There's always that escape valve. Again, though, I don't know what
gotta have it.
I don't know what
Mass
math
is very
does.
similar.
I would imagine. So,
Becky?
I have a question for Allison. Do you feel as if you've been getting help this year, like, to pass that test? I mean, extra help, or do you feel comfortable with that?
It's more like you have to go and get it. It's kind of like it's talked about, but nobody really takes action. So it's like, oh, you really, really need to do well on this, but we're not really going to help you that much. And, like, I'm busy. Like, I have a lot to do. So, like, having to study for a kneecap test that I'm supposed to pass is kind of not the first thing.
Do you have an extra class that you're taking?
No, I don't. Because in order to take the extra class, I would have had to take numeracy, and I'm applying to some Ivy League schools, and I didn't think it was the best option for me to take a numeracy
Ivy League
class.
schools.
so how
Oh,
did
yeah, you can get accepted to an Ivy League school and fail the kneecap.
I really have a
There's something
as
wrong.
everybody knows, I have a problem with the high-stakes testing, but especially in math. I mean, you can have someone who can read college material,
Piece of it.
write like a rocket scientist, and for whatever reason has this glitch and they can't do math.
That's
And if you can't do math according to the way the state has it now, you're not going to graduate, and I think that's outrageous. But
Or maybe you can do
Math,
math,
but it's that
but
test.
maybe you had a bad day.
Yeah, it's the
or,
test
there are
format.
some
Yeah.
There are a number of different reasons.
No,
Jim.
yeah.
Yeah, there are a number of different reasons, but again, that's why I want the waiver in place. It's one that the State Department of
It
Education
meets
is
the
recommending,
requirements. Yeah, that's what we're doing.
and it will, if it helps one kid, it's worth us having this.
So I have a question. When would that be put in order?
We'll take care of you, okay?
Upon
First thing,
I'm
first thing,
This is the
no,
first reading.
first thing, we take care of you, because in December, if the school it's all about you, Allison. If the school committee passes this tonight and passes it in December, then the waiver will be in place, okay?
Okay.
Does it make you feel better?
Yeah.
Good,
Chances
good,
are we'll
good,
do it.
okay.
I support the concept of the waiver. I just want to make one comment, observation. There are fields where you have to pass the high-stakes test. One is law. You can go to law school, you can be the best student in the classroom. If you can't pass the bar exam,
Yeah.
you don't make it. Likewise in medicine. If you don't pass, you don't get the MD degree. And if you're going to go on to, say, surgery or other advanced specialties, there are board certification. If you don't pass those, there's no, you could be the best resident in the world. If you can't pass that test, you're not going to get board certification. And that means a lot in terms of prestige, and it may come down to payment. So I just one comment as I hear this debate about high-stakes test. there are some fields where you're going to have to do it and you're going to have to pass.
Right.
Well, I also, oh, sorry. I also think that's a different example, though, because in that situation, you're asking for it. Like, if you're gonna go to, like, law school, like, that's what you want. If you're gonna go to med school, that's what you want. Like, if I was gonna try to be a civil engineer, I wouldn't make it very far. But that's not what I want. So it's kind of hard because we have to pick our path and we have to choose where we're going, but then we're also being forced to do things that we're not necessarily good at.
Well said.
And you know what, Doc? I would not want a doctor that had a C average.
Yeah, that's it, yeah.
Or a lawyer.
No, that's...
Okay, I think it's been moved and seconded on waivers. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Let's see. Playgrounds. Dr. Flowers?
This isn't,
No,
no, this is
No,
this is
that's not
Dr.
mine.
Ambrogi.
That's not mine.
This is ordinance request change.
Yeah.
This came as a result of discussion with the police department. Joe, Eva, and I have talked about this as well. We find that after hours at the Pell School, when it's dark, kids are hanging around in the back, and there's been some problem with the play equipment. So I spoke with the police, and Chief Silva had recommended that we request a change in the ordinance. All we're doing is asking that the ordinance be amended because we already have Cranston Calvert in this ordinance. So I called up Neil. Neil suggested that this was the most appropriate approach to take. So if you approve this, then what we would do is we would ask the city council to change the ordinance to include the Pell School. I think they'll still have the Cranston Calvert School playground there because there's still
They're
Cranston
still
Calvert
using
School
still
playground.
used, yeah.
So I'm recommending that.
That makes sense.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion on the item?
Yeah, I have a,
Becky?
just so, you know, there was some concern by at least one city council person that, you know, a school is for a community and that they wanted to maybe have lights and you know, keeps people playing basketball, you know, and that's a good thing, or, you know, on the basketball courts. But, you know, more I think about it during the summer, at least it doesn't get dark till 9 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
So that's, you know, going to be helpful. And, but it may not pass there, so we'll have to see what happens. And I also, for a later date, I think we should take up no animals ordinance on the playground like we had at Cog Show. We passed that a while ago. So no animals allowed, because because what happens is the dogs defecate on the playground.
I don't think, I think if it's the same as Calvin's, we had no dogs allowed.
But you need to put a sign up, it's got to be, you know.
Oh, right, yeah.
Right, so it's
But
just,
the ordinance is already in place.
all public schools will have to see.
Ours, we had, no, it was actually on the side of the building.
Maybe we could just ask about that, just because it, you know, it's
Did
nothing
you
like
check the
cleaning up
city
dog
ordinance?
feces from your kid's shoes.
Oh, the kids stepping in it and tracking it back into
That's what I meant.
school.
There we go.
But the objection, though, to the lights on the basketball court is in consideration of the neighbors.
That's correct. Everybody's
I think it would be an imposition to have people playing until midnight.
And that was the concept, that they would be loud, they would
Yeah.
be making noises, and the residents on Dudley Avenue, I think, would be adversely impacted. So I'm recommending this.
Pass that down.
You have a vote on it?
Yeah, all in favor?
Yeah, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Now, item 6.6, all right, Sandra, is it all right if I go ahead and just expound on the issue of attendance?
What's this now?
Yeah, he's the next
Compulsory
one.
attendance.
Oh,
6.6.
okay, hold on. I'm sorry.
This has been a big problem for the school. Just
Oh, yeah.
to put something in a favorable light, we've just had some recent results on absenteeism, and Thompson Middle School, absentee rate has fallen greatly, so there has been great improvement. But what we're talking about tonight is truancy at the elementary school. In the past, we have identified families where Mr. Merritt and others have gone talked to the family, visited the family, and they still refuse to go. And they fill out petitions that have gone to truancy court, and they get refused at truancy court for a good reason, and that is they get into a courtroom situation, and the defendant is the 7 or 8-year-old kid who doesn't understand why he's there, and he is not the responsible party. So the judges at truancy court have dismissed the cases. So last year, I think it was like 200 at Pell were dismissed, and it was clear that we weren't affecting the attendance rate. So we had a meeting turns out in August, and Senator Fiva Weed came because I sort of felt that we need some help from the legislature. And she said, no, let me get hold of Judge Bedrosian. Well, a month and a half went by. First, the senator was away, and then the judge was away, but we finally got a meeting set up for Halloween. And it was a very useful discussion. Mrs. Gaines was there, I was there, Ray Schultz was there, along with Mark McKenna and Mr. Merritt. And we presented our problem, and we explained how we use the truancy court, and they all shook their head, the people around the table. We suggest, and they use the word criminal court. You utilize the criminal court, and it's a different process. Petition is made out, and it's handled by a prosecutor from within the city. Now, under the roof of family court, there's 2 calendars. One is truancy calendar, and the other is the criminal calendar. And we've been using the truancy and struck out. They suggest that we use the criminal calendar and see if we can't get better results. At the criminal court, the judge has the authority to fine the parent or caregiver, and also to imprison the parent or caregivers. Secondly, that judge would probably recognize that there might be abuse in the family and call on DCYF, which is a very significant impact on a family when DCYF gets involved. So what they're recommending to us, that Mr. Merritt, and they've identified that they had right in their hands 5 or 6 patients or families who had a significant history of ignoring the system, of ignoring the truancy court, and they have given him a petition to go through to criminal court, and it'll be handled in a different way, and we think it's probably going to be much more, it'll end up with some positive, probably the wrong word, but it'll end up with a decision made which will probably force the parent to consider making sure the child gets to school. So they recommended that we just pass some sort of a resolution that we're going to do this. I've passed one around, and it's open to suggestions. We've been meeting, had a lot of talks with Neil Galvin on this and so on. And he just wanted a few measurable things. One is I put down 10 unexcused absences, and they want to change that. And also efforts that have been made to intervene. That family has been called and visits have been offered or made to the home to see if they can turn this thing around before a petition is filed. But instead of the petition going to truancy court calendar, rather, it goes to criminal calendar, and that's the difference. So I'd ask you to approve this just so we can move on with it. But maybe people would like to discuss it first.
I'll move the motion.
You'll move the motion? Okay.
I'll second it.
Okay. Any comments? I know a lot of you have strong feelings on this subject. Mr.
Yeah, I'm
Geary.
very pleased with what you've done. Thank you very much. I'm a big fan of this. My question would be that, what did the judge say about high school, where we had last year 44% of the kids were 18 days absent or more?
We purposely limited the discussion to the elementary school. I think we need to talk about that at another date, but that is, in this case, the responsible party for the kid who's in high school and middle school is the kid himself, whereas the guilty party and the kid in elementary school is the parent. So that's why the differential. Mrs. Gaines?
I think if we pass this and word gets out that if parents don't send their kids to school, we'll see an improved attendance at the high school, especially with that big J hanging over things. If they don't pay their fines, they can be imprisoned. And parents are responsible for their kids going to school now until they're 18. So, but with the little ones, what we're trying to do is change a culture. If a child gets in the habit of not going to school, then as they get older, they won't see any importance in going. And I think if we start with the little ones and build from there, and we can definitely bring the parents to court for the little kids. So I think it's a good start.
Oh, absolutely. And Dr. Brozier, you think that the principals at the elementary, middle, and high school, seeing the first quarter is about over, give us a report what we have for absenteeism and tardiness?
Eddie could have given us that.
We get that on a monthly basis from Eddie Merritt, and we have that available. Just two comments. Number one, we talk about need for early education. You understand that youngsters below the age of 6 are not required to go to school at all. So our kindergarten kids, we can't even touch.
Yeah.
I mean, we can't
Unless they are
we
6.
can't even do anything with those youngsters until they turn 6.
Yeah.
That's something that I think the state law should address. I mean, we're talking about providing early childhood activities, and yet we don't even require kids to go to kindergarten.
And especially when
Hopefully that's going to change.
Yeah, especially when they're looking at perhaps compulsory pre-K coming along. So that is something that we could address with our State House folks. But at this particular point, there are a number of youngsters who will be turning 6, and some come in a 6 already in kindergarten. And they're sometimes the ones that you really have to get after. And if siblings are being affected by this, they just might get themselves in there too. And parents will probably say it's just as easy to get the youngsters into school. It has to be done. I always said my concern, and I know I've mentioned it to Mrs. Gaines, we talk about this unexcused absences. And you can pretty much tell when people are playing a game, writing notes covering for the kids, but illness, obviously, reasonable excuses, that's different. And I feel comfortable with the 10 myself, because you get much beyond that. That's half a month of school.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Mr. Quinn?
The only thing I'd like to thank you for your work on this issue.
Thank you.
Because this has bothered me forever, because I feel it's the parents' responsibility in the elementary, not the children, and the ones that are suffering are the children. And I really want to thank you for the effort and at least getting something done, or it looks that way.
Yeah.
Yes, Mrs. Bowles?
Two things. One is, as our policy committee needs to look at policy 5160, because it still refers to 16-year-olds being compulsory, and now the law's 18, so we need to change that. And the second thing is, when we do look at a family, then, and we're going to only focus on the elementary, but I would think if it's a family problem, like it's a pattern, that we then would address the whole family in that court, correct?
I'm sure that would happen, because social workers become involved at that level.
I would, just because we may as well, if we got the attention of the parent, and there's a problem in the middle school, let's just go for it, but as you said, focus on the elementary. But I would hate to see the middle schooler get away with it, and not address that one.
Again, we need to completely understand the process and the difference in the process. Middle school and high school has the truancy court. They have someone here who will guide the process. Eddie Merritt has a certain number of days. They refer it to the truancy court. The truancy court magistrate comes down. They call the family in. They work with the family. They try and make sure that the youngster does certain things, and they direct the family to do that. Now, their carrot is, if you do this, then you won't be charged with truancy in family court. We don't have that in the elementary school. And hence, that was the whole issue where this arose. So what we have to do is we have to develop some procedures as to how that happens, and we can replicate those supports at the elementary school and offer them to the parents. And it's up to the parents to take the supports or not, and if they don't take the supports, then we can move forward on whatever we need to do. The only other thing is, it would be interesting, and I think we ought to memorialize the nexus between the city solicitor and the superintendent and school committee. That's another thing we need to figure out.
Well,
Chairman?
Yes.
Yeah, I also think that Newport has a lot of social service agencies here. We're, in many respects, very lucky to have those. And I think we should be utilizing those in conjunction with, taking these parents to court. Because, when you go into the court, the first thing the court's going to want to know is,
What have you done?
What have you done before they got here? And let's be realistic. There's nobody going on the chain gang in Rhode Island because their kids didn't go to school. It's not going to happen. So, but if we're going into court and we have the Partnership of Families and all those agencies here, and we can show that, that the parents have not done their job, I think the courts are going to be much more willing to use the resources of DCYF or other resources that they have at their disposal to put pressure on these parents to do their job. And I think that most parents don't want to lose their kids. Now, I went out to Pell School on a different thing, and I talked to somebody out there who goes to homes all the time. I said, so tell me about going to the homes with these kids, young kids. And the person said, I went to the home and I talked to this parent, and the parent says to me, I got a car out there that's my car, and I'm not paying for electricity, I'm not paying for heat, and I got this computer and I got that, and I didn't go to school. So why should I send my kids to school? That's a direct story of a parent sitting out there who says, tell me the reason why I should send my kids to school. And by the way, while I'm talking to you, I bet you don't have the stuff that I have. So, there's a worker looking. So, that's kind of some of the stuff that you face. I think the courts will help us straighten some of that attitude out, because I think it's gotten to a point that some people feel pretty entitled, they're pretty safe about the way it is, and they're kind of just sitting there going, you can't touch me, and there's nothing you can do about it. Well, you know what?
Yeah.
Maybe it's time that they find out that we can do something about it. And like I said, I have no delusions that they're going to be a chain gang anywhere, but at the same time, maybe there's some pressure to be brought on some of them. And as in any situation, you don't correct everything, but if we correct 95% of it, we're going to be way better off than we are right now.
Yeah. Well, as all of you know, I've been talking about this law on the book that a parent could be fined for I don't know how many years, but nobody wanted to do it. And finally, we have a judge who is ready to pull the trigger. And I just think we ought to take advantage of that and go for it.
Start tomorrow.
Yes.
Okay, I need a vote then. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Go into discussion items, contract negotiations. Mr. Leary, you want to lead off on this one?
Yeah, I don't have much to say. I just think it is almost, next meeting is December. I think we need to start getting together and start planning, Both contracts up, 94 and 10 are up in August. So I think we should start getting together. I'm not saying when or where, but at some point we should start getting together and start looking at this. I don't want to start looking at this in June or July.
I agree.
I agree.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I had a phone call today from somebody who's on the new finance committee for Newport. Newport's putting together a finance committee, and they asked about, the school department, and I guess they're going to, they're going to look at the police department and the fire department. But I think that at some point we also have to look at the school department in context with the rest of the city, because, we constantly hear about what the school department should be doing, the school department should be doing, and I'm not sure the rest of the city does all the stuff that they want us to do. So, I'm more than happy to, to go out and do what we have to do to keep finances down and get the things for the kids that they need. But at the same time, I'm not sure that I want to be the poster child for every thing that comes along that people think should happen to any organization or institution. So I think we need to pick our battles. We need to look at, where we sit with the rest of the world, and have positions that we take on that, and not just say, we're going to be leading the charge for things when all of a sudden you turn around and find out that the people who've told you to lead the charge are not behind you. They leave you out there hanging. So I'm just, and I'm not pointing a finger at anybody, I'm just talking generically about what happens in some of these situations.
So I guess my point is here, at what point do we schedule a meeting?
As soon as possible is fine with me, because I think we've got a lot of talking to do.
Absolutely.
Can I suggest those who wish to be on those committees, and we've got two, 10 and 94, give me their names, send their names, send me an email, or maybe better to Wendy, as to which one you want to be on, and because there's no point I think we need separate meetings once we've decided.
Well, why don't we have the group together first, Dr.
You want to do
I'm
it?
not sure why, let's all get together and discuss what you need to be in the contract. Let me look at one thing that drives me nuts. I know Bob just gets specific, but on the 10th day of school, we had to hire another teacher because we were 3 kids and 2 kids, 1 kid's over. But if that happened on the 11th day of school, or the 12th day of school, or the 50th day of school, it doesn't mean anything. I don't understand where this number 10 comes in there. At some point, we all need to sit down and look at everything in the contract, and then maybe make up committees, go forward.
Okay, let's do that then. All right, well, Joe, we'll try to schedule. December gets pretty busy.
Yes, I'm saying probably December sometime.
Are you really sure you want to do it this
You want to wait to January?
I think
Well,
That's when we choose our new subcommittees at the organizational meeting.
It's number one, and you do have a new superintendent coming in who should be
aware of
being
what the
able
issues.
to weigh in on the decision-making. I mean, you can certainly get some, I can get preliminary data from the administrators regarding their concerns and forward it to Colleen, but
January's fine.
Right, I wouldn't suggest that you do it before she comes on board.
And I think we need to schedule a meeting first
I'm
with
already
the
in a
whole school
holiday
committee.
mood.
One for the Council 94, everybody get the contract, and one for 10,
It's a late Thanksgiving this year, Joey.
Well, I saw snow today, and that means
that's it,
jingle
yeah.
bells, so.
I mean Sarasota to me.
Can't see the snow from there.
The next item is 3 requests from me. One is...
No, Pell School update.
Oh, I'm sorry, go.
Yeah, okay. Well, we're getting ready to close out the project, and if anybody has anything to say before I have, the last person who's going to speak on this will be Dr. Booth, because she has some really exciting news. So does anybody else have anything to say? I think it's working well. Anytime you have such a culture change in a community, and I think you're going to have some growing pains. But quite honestly, as Kathleen said, the kids love it. As far as I know, the kids that I go in and see, and the teachers that I talk to, individual teachers that I talk to, they really like it.
They do.
So, and it's a great facility. We had the architects and engineers who came from New England, and they thought it was just great. They thought it was just great.
You told them about the other award we got.
Yeah. Didn't we talk about that?
I think we did.
I don't know. It didn't carry any money with it.
Yeah, well, that
You didn't see the money, that's
but the 4% extra for the taxpayers worked out well.
Yeah,
huh,
the 4
Jody?
extra, yeah, that worked
So-
well.
Mr. Chairman, this may be a Dr. Ambrosi question. At what point is we closing this out, the punch list?
Well, that's what I'm pushing on. I asked them to get me everything by December 1st. They want the whole thing to be closed out by December 1st.
Okay, so that's a concern. It's only a few days away. When we have, just along with the gym, all the stuff, I'm not saying everything needs to be done, but I think at some point, as a committee member, we need to see a list of the things that they had, and maybe Jim Farrar needs to come in front of us and say what's been done, what's not done.
There
For
were
example,
900 lists.
Yeah, there were about 900 items on the punch list.
Little tiny things.
have they fixed, have they completed?
No, it's not complete. That's why it's not punched out yet. Every commission, every piece of that building has to be commissioned. What's that term they use? It has to be
Commissioning agent,
proven
yeah.
that it works right. And I think it took Thompson, Bob, you should remember,
About a year.
yeah,
for all the mechanicals.
Staying for a
Because
year.
You got AC stuff that you probably never even really used this year, you got the heating system.
Yeah, you gotta run it.
Boilers.
So at what point did they get their last check?
Yeah, but...
When it's punched out.
But those things like
First?
Bob are talking about
No.
are guaranteed for the year. So that's why when it goes through, that's okay. But the punch list is, okay, this piece of furniture doesn't exactly close correctly, fix it. You know, this water fountain isn't what we wanted to, fix it, okay? It's taking longer than I had wanted, but...
Yeah.
So can we
And
have
you
Jim?
can't rush it.
So I know you can't, and that's what December 1st seems like a rush.
December.
To me, I'm very concerned because I know I've been in the gym floor, that's one, there's a loop in that floor there. I don't know what that means, but there is. I've also been in the cafeteria, and if you walk straight in the cafeteria and walk to the far wall by the gym, and then look at the serving line, there's a line that goes about 30 feet that's raised up about a quarter of an inch. Now, what is that? Is that a crack in the foundation underneath there? I don't know what it means, what it is, but you can stand there and look and see the tiles where it's higher. And it's about a quarter of an inch higher going straight across 30 or 40 feet. So, I mean, I think at some point we need, I think, as a school committee, before I'm willing to sign off, I want to have Jim come in here and say, okay, there's 9 other things. We've got 800 of them done, here's what we're missing. And then we can say to them, well, did you address the gym floor with the loop? Did you address the cafeteria floor with the line going through it? And they may seem like little things, but don't forget, they forgot about Thompson's steps. We just had to redo them all within 10 years. It was on a punch list, we could have got that done. So I personally am not ready to sign off until I see that punch list, and he said, yes, it's done, you know? And I think as a person, I'm not ready for December 1st, that's for sure. That's
I'll
Oh,
like 2
bring
weeks
it up
away.
at the next
Do
building.
we have a date when we're going to know how much money is left, if there is money left?
After
That's
it's
why-
closed out.
That's why we're trying to close out the
But
project.
I think what Bob's talking about is, you know, this warranties, guarantees, and a punch list that we all agree that if it's not painted, it's supposed to be painted. We agree if there's a
Right.
bump in the floor, and it's not supposed to be a bump in the floor, that gets fixed. But then there's, the other part of that is, those are all under
That's
the warranty
okay.
piece.
All of those other things, Bob, were okay.
Yeah.
All right, so that,
They-
so the
they get
point is,
paid,
at some point,
right.
you still should say, all right, you know, how much money do I have left in the budget? Because I paid all those bills. What date is that? Do we know?
Well, that's why I'm pressing them to get everything closed out by the 1st of December.
So that's the day we'll know.
Well, that's the day I want to know what that number is.
That doesn't
Yeah.
mean that Bob Leary and Bob Power have to sign off on, you know,
No.
that everything's
They didn't
good in that
submit it.
building.
No. The signing now has to be done by the contractor and the owner's rep, that everything in that building is as it should be.
So Jim Farrar is willing to say that gym floor is fine and that cafeteria floor is fine.
That is up to Jim Farrar to analyze and evaluate.
So I think he needs to tell us.
I never heard about the cafeteria floor. I heard about the gym floor,
Yeah.
but never heard about the cafeteria floor. That's news to me.
So that my problem would be 10 years from now, something happens and the whole thing is cracked and we're stuck with it. I mean,
Well, Bob Leary's gonna say, I told you so.
you're right, I will. You're absolutely right, I will.
That's the Bob Leary crack. I told him it was gonna crack, and it cracked.
So, at any rate, that's something that obviously our owner's rep is responsible to do.
Okay.
Okay, now, any other issues? Yes?
It said that you reported that the computers were purchased, so where are we in that process?
Okay, now I'm going to talk. We have purchased the computers for the upper school and the laptops for the lower school, iPads for the lower school, tablets, whatever. So, Dr. Booth has been working very diligently to get a matching grant from...
Van Buren Charitable Foundation.
Okay, come up to the microphone and let's let everybody know the good news that
We got it.
we just found out this afternoon.
All right.
Yes.
When we talked about what technology was available in the bond, being the technology geek that I am, I really felt that we should try any way we could to get more laptops and iPads in the hands of the kids and reduce that ratio. So with the help of Osiris Gonzalez, we wrote a grant to the Van Buren Foundation and submitted that, I think it was July, it had to be in July, for $100,008. I don't know why we couldn't round it off, but we submitted it, and it included 100 more of the laptops, 50 more iPads, the carts that go with them, some professional development for the teachers, and they met Friday, and we heard today that Van Buren has funded all but the $8.
So I'm writing a check for the $8.
$100,000 grant that Dr. Ambrosi will get the paperwork this week.
Good.
And the check will follow
Absolutely.
right away. So we'll be adding double,
Yeah.
basically,
Right.
what we have now.
So in that case, our campaign for technology will be more for maintenance and renewal.
Well, I
right?
think that's one of
There's
the,
a list of, we've been meeting with Osiris. There's a list of other things that are not in that building
Okay.
that we're looking at. So yes, this is great, and it's the beginning of kind of the capital campaign, and we're out there looking, and that's how we did it last time. We got a grant from here and money from there, and all came together, and so this is money that's going to be there, and obviously their name will be on the building somewhere.
That's right.
well, and I also think, just as a district, we need to look at how we're going to fund technology in the future, because it's no longer an add-on. It's really a necessary part to keep our
Yep.
students competitive with the students in the rest of the state and country.
I think the most exciting thing you said was that there's going to be some education for the teachers on how to use all this technology, because it's one thing to put it in the classroom, it's another thing to really empower them on how to use it. So I hope that's ongoing throughout, because we don't want drive-by, but rather something that's ongoing so that they get, as they get into it, then they learn more.
Yeah, and I think, most of our teachers are pretty capable and competent. We have some superstars that really have stepped up to the plate and helped, but we will provide some professional development as well. So, it's exciting.
I wanted to give Dr. Booth and Mr. Gonzalez kudos for developing the grant and submitting the grant, and thanks to the trust for trusting in us to utilize their funds appropriately in the best interest of the kids at the
that's
middle
good
school.
news.
Good job.
I'm glad I came.
Thank you, John. Job well done. Okay, and that was the hurrah.
I've added a few items, 7.3, 7.4, and 5. First one is school committee members' attendance at the National School Board Association Conference. Why it's come up now is they've sent us a notice. If you want to register and get a hotel room, this is the time to do it. And I think, I don't know if everybody, I don't think everybody should go at one time, but I think we ought to try to select who's going to go so they can make reservations at this time. It's open for discussion.
Mr. Chairman, may I?
Mrs. Gaines.
I would suggest that we first determine how much of the expenses we will pay, rather than paying everything for everybody, which would be a pretty tough task, with things that are facing us right now. And allow anybody to go that wants to go if they pay the balance of what they need to pay. I'm already registered, so I'm going.
As you going through Rhode Island Association School Committee?
I had her register me, but I don't know if I'm going to be a delegate or not.
Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Baker.
last year I was scheduled to go, and then we froze the money, so I still have a credit with one of the airlines. If I don't use, I lose about $700. But that's just the way it goes.
If you mention Southwest on the TV, you get an extra bonus, so
There
it was
we go.
Southwest.
So anyways, well, yeah, they were nice enough to say, if you want to go, so we'll see what happens with that. But having said that, I think that, I'm certainly more than willing, if I'm going to go to a national conference, to pay for my hotel room, my airfare, that kind of stuff. I would think that the district would pay
The registration.
my conference registration fee. The other stuff, my meals and everything else, I don't have a problem doing that. But I think it's important to go to national conferences, and I'll tell you why. Because when I was in Bristol Warren we had a member that went to the National School Board Association, came back and had a suggestion of how to change the bus process, and we saved $100,000. And that was back in the 80s. So that was a lot of money. And there's people in this country that have ways to skin a cat better than we do, that if you go to some of those national conferences, you hear those kinds of things. So I think it's an important thing for people to go to, and if you're sitting in the right room at the right time and you hear the right thing, you get great programs, you get great stuff. I mean, tonight we're talking about technology. There was a superintendent who just gave a presentation to the Superintendent Association. It's Every Child, Every Day is the book he wrote. His district is the most successful district in the United States at, with technology and kids. He has people coming to his district from all over the world to see that. And part of it had to do with what Mrs. Boland said, that they provided in-service for the teachers. They didn't drop technology into the classrooms and say, good luck. They had technology, and they did a lot of training with the teachers, and it took time to have that happen over a period of time. But those are the kinds of things that when you go to a national conference, you sit with people, you learn some of those kinds of things, and it pays off. As Mr. Leary's talking about, with contracts. I mean, sometimes you go and you sit in a room with people, and they're doing some different things with compensation or other things for people in contracts that you come back and you propose that to people, and people, yeah, I'd like that, or that would be great. I'd rather have that than this, and it's things that we haven't thought of because we haven't been there, but there's certainly other parts of the country that are leading the way in some of the things that we'd like to, I think, do here in Newport. So I clearly support going to national conferences. Like I said, I have no problem, paying my way for the other expenditures, but I think that the district should pay for the registration at the conference.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Leary.
I am dead set against this. First of all, you look at the line item. The line item number is 53303, and we have $3,000 in that account for school committee conferences. So I guess at the last Financial Advisory Council meeting, which I resigned from, you guys put $2,000. Instead of reducing the $400,000 that we're in a hole, you added $2,000 to it. So at some point, I think you now have $5,000 on that line item for money. So there's probably money there. I'm not sure that this is a good idea when everything else is short, and you're short $400,000 to go out and spend on travel and going away. I don't know how much you're going to pay yourself, how much you're not going to pay yourself, but I have records from other years. Last year alone, there's people that spent $2,000, $2,300, $2,400. There's people that charge for tolls, they reimburse the tolls, they reimburse for tips, they reimburse for everything, for food. I'm sure maybe they're stopping this now because it's coming public, but I'm just not a big fan that we should be doing this. At some point, I think we got to deal with this council and this $400,000, and maybe we're going to have to freeze the budget again, And I, for one, don't think it's a good time to be doing this.
Mr. Chairman.
Well, let me take Dr. Flowers first.
I, for one, paid for my flight last year. I have never charged any of my food bills. And also, some of us do attend other professional development, which I believe is a state regulation that we are supposed to get a certain number of credits, I guess we'll call it, a year. Not everyone does that, but I firmly believe if we require our professional educators to do that, is something that we should do ourselves. It is costly. I agree with Dr. Power that this, in essence, I think is what he's probably intimating, it's an investment in the educational system here for the district to pay for certain charges. The flight, fine, we can take care of that. We can see what the costs are and see what we can manage ourselves. But to me, it's an investment. I know some people do not believe in the professional development. I certainly do. As I said, we require our personnel to do this. We should be part of it, too.
I just got Mrs. Gaines.
Go ahead.
Well, I just want to step in at this point and say, there's a lot of things happening right now. New York State is talking about mandatory pre-K. I don't know if you saw the New York Times about Oklahoma, Sunday's paper about pre-K. A lot of states are moving, and I think probably it's going, the federal government probably, or President Obama, is probably going to release some money for pre-K. So I think it's important for us to understand where that money is going to be used and how to access that money. The other was earlier this evening, we talked about the park stuff. That's in a state of flux. But the only way you're going to find out about it is to go to some of these meetings and listen to people talk and find out where people have done the right thing or where they've gone down at dead ends. So I think it's important for us. And the other is math. Those of us who are lucky enough to go up to Boston and heard Saul Kaplan talk. Is it Saul Kaplan? It's Kaplan anyhow. The Kaplan, but Kahn, I'm sorry. You know, really, it's spectacular stuff. And to realize there is the potential of getting these kids to learn, all they need is perhaps a new technique. I think there's a lot of value to going these. And you're not going to, I don't find reading the National School Board magazine gives me all that information. I think you have to sort of sit there and listen to other people, not only the speaker, but listen to the questions from the audience. Mrs. Gaines?
I have not missed a national conference since I've been on the school committee. And a lot of my expenses, except the registration, I've paid out of pocket. And I'm not saying that everybody should, or everybody can, or everybody even wants to. But it was my choice. Last year, when I realized where we were with our budget, I paid my everything for myself. So, you know, the idea of saying that people are charging food and charging, I don't think that's appropriate. When you go to these conferences, you are still working for the district. It's a lot of hard work. You get sore feet, you get aching backs because you're walking all over the place, going to these different conferences and sessions. I have not regretted ever going to a conference. I always come home with something new that I've learned. And I think it's made me a better board member. And I will continue to go as long as I'm here.
Well, I ask you, if you're really seriously interested in going, let me know so we can start doing some planning. The other item I put on stems from the meeting we had relating to block booking, and that is chorus and band. And I'm just wanted to start a discussion, say, with Mr. Bernstein about having afternoon chorus band, not every day, but if they're interested, it wouldn't count for a scholastic course any more than going out for the football team gets you credits for phys ed. On the other hand, there are kids who just are taking so many courses, they don't have the time for chorus. The other thing that's pushing me a little bit is I understand there's quite a bit of interest in music at Thompson Middle School. And I think there's going to be a bunch of kids coming forward who would like to participate with band and chorus. And I think we ought to try to think about perhaps expanding to an afternoon program for some of these activities. It's open for discussion. I don't know what other people might feel about it. Yes, Mrs. Bowen.
And what maybe could happen, I know that it's written in the contract that itinerants cannot, they can start their day at a later time. So maybe you know, the itinerant teacher then, you know, we pay them to teach the class, or what, you know, that, whether we called it a class or they got credit for or whatever, but it could be before school or after school, and just move his schedule around to include that, because I think that, like you, there are too many kids. What happens is they get in their junior and senior year, and then they're up against, well, are you going to take AP Physics, or am I going to take, you know, it's always up against something. And there have been some great musicians that have had to give up, you know, make that choice. I'm sure you high school teachers, you know, and it's very, you know, unfortunate. And I just think you're right. We should become more creative and see what we can do to offer that different time. I think they do offer band right now before school at the middle school, don't we?
Yeah.
Yeah, but they're bused there. The only, and I agree the district going forward should look at this as an activity. But once you make it a for credit course, you have to transport, and we don't have the transportation.
That's why I'd say,
Chairman?
yes, Mr. Dr. Powers?
I think that, we need to take a look at where we are with the high school, where we are with courses, where we are with any of the band, chorus, some of the other things. And, we need to get together with the teachers union and say, listen, we're at a point that we're either are going to be competitive with some of the other schools, Prout and these other places that pull our kids out of here, or we're not going to be competitive. And we've got to figure a way to be able to do that, because if we don't, the conversation that they're having now about putting two high schools together, which I think is really hard for people to get their head around, because that's a huge bite of the apple. But the truth is, at some point, we've got the Met School that's moved in, they're building a new building, and there's kids going out there, and the lion's share of the kids are coming from Newport. You've got another group that's talking about, let's have a STEM academy, and they want to pull kids out of the school system and put them over there. And unless the school department as a whole, and it's not just the administration, it's not just the school committee, it's the teachers and everybody, if we don't get competitive with what we're doing, they're going to put us out of business. We will be out of business because other people because they're going to vote with their feet, they'll vote with their dollars. So, it's really, this is just the tip of the iceberg, because I remember when I was at Rogers High School, obviously a lot more kids there then, but, band was a big thing, and kids went to band at lunchtime, and when I came back to Newport, I said, where's band? They said, well, they changed the schedule, and all the kids can't get there because of other things. And I know all the requirements have changed on a lot of things for kids, but I think that if we don't sit down and say, what are we going to do to be competitive, we're going to get put out of business. As we know, public education is going to change, and I don't want to see that happen, because a lot of the kids that benefit public education are the kids that are disenfranchised. They're the kids whose parents don't send them to school. They don't get them on, when we had the lottery for kindergarten, they were the ones that never showed up for the lottery. They just see the bus go by and went, the beginning of school and say, oh, my kid's got to go to school. And they never picked their kids' teachers. They didn't do any of that stuff, and those kids ended up where they ended up. So, there's a real reason why there's public education. And we have a democracy in this country, and if people aren't well educated, they can't go to the polls and they can't vote with any kind of knowledge. You can't have a democracy if you don't have an educated population. So, we are at a point that we've got to, this is just the beginning of looking at what are we doing. I'm never opposed when Mr. Leary says, I want to know if the high school's doing the best they can do, because if we're not doing the best we can do, then we'll put ourselves out of business.
Yeah, Dr.
Yeah,
Flowers?
the idea of, and I think Mrs. Boland referenced it, of the special subject teachers, in this case it would be the music teachers, perhaps starting later, they'll have their required, their number of hours in. This whole concept of shifting band, chorus, even in the elementary school, I think I mentioned it to a couple of you a few weeks ago. This is probably 20 years ago we were talking about this, because youngsters were being pulled out of the elementary class to go to chorus and go to band, and sometimes you forgot what the kid looked like. The kid was going here and there, and it really impacted on the academic time, the teaching time. So if you could just shift the music teachers, for example, later, but they're the ones, you talk to the people who are doing this, and if they can work that schedule up, it'd probably be the wise thing to do. And also maybe looking at another community, our friends to the north in Portsmouth. I think it seems like 3/4 of the high school kids have to be in that band. I mean, it's huge, and they're good.
What you see is middle school and high school.
Middle and high, but they call it the
In
Portsmouth High
March.
School Band.
Really, Joe? Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow,
but still,
okay.
they're there. And again, it's more, maybe it's a little
It'd
more.
be
of a
interesting to
concept.
see how they do that, how they
They have
provide.
It'd be interesting to see how they
after-school
schedule.
Pardon?
They have after-school rehearsals.
Well,
Do they also have it as a subject during the
Yes.
day?
you can get
Yes.
graded, yeah. Oh,
Well,
yeah, it should be.
all I'm looking for is, I'd like to have started a discussion, unless the
Yeah.
superintendent to call a meeting of the music department and
Okay.
maybe the principals of the high school, and just sit down and talk a little bit and see if there's any interest in doing it. If there is, I think we have to start, but I'd like to at least start a discussion with him. I know Mr. Bernstein quite well, but I have not had this discussion with him. I'd like to do it through the superintendent if I could.
Sure.
I think it's a good time to do it because the program at the middle school has really built up. And you don't want to lose those kids.
That's it.
You got to catch them while they're hot.
So if the superintendent's willing to do that, I'd like to move on to the next subject, which is Rogers High School change the start time. I know.
That's what I'm not willing to do. One was easy,
Well,
not so much the
May I
next one.
suggest, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
I think this should start with the sit team. I think you should go to a sit meeting at Rogers. You have,
You're talking which
I'm
group?
talking to you,
About which item?
about the change
Start
time.
time.
I think that
Okay.
conversation should start at the high school.
Well, I know Dr. Powers is interested in doing it, and I'm not.
Well,
I'm not.
listen, I'm glad to have it on the agenda, because I
Yeah.
spoke up last time about this. I said, I don't think the high school should be afraid of coming up with concepts like that. If that's something that's going to make a difference, can be done, then we should have a discussion about that, as opposed to saying, can't do it. I don't know.
Right.
In North Kingstown, if I remember correctly, I think they changed their time. I know the elementary schools in North Kingstown, they get out about 4 o'clock. The kids are not walking home in the dark. They're okay.
They get
But
out at
I've
4
been over
o'clock.
there, so I'm not afraid of having that conversation. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. I understand that, but I don't think we should just summarily dismiss every time somebody brings up a concept and say, oh, I don't want to do that, I don't want to take that on. I understand, Jack, I know you're retiring, you don't want to get into this conversation.
No, I'll be happy to get in the middle of it right now, Bob, if you want me to.
No, but I'm just saying-
Since it came up, I'll tell you what my
I
opinion
know,
was and will be,
That's okay, but you're not going to be here.
I am,
I'm going to
and
be
I am-
here.
and I understand that I'm not
I think that we should have
gonna-
the opportunity
which
to
is
have
which
people
is
be able
which
to
is
speak.
why I
Well,
suggested we should wait until I'm not here.
Let's not get into the pros and cons. We just want to set up a system of how we're going to do this. How would you suggest we set up, Mrs. Bowen?
Well, I think there's a sit team meeting this upcoming Tuesday over at Rogers, and I'll be at that meet, I try to attend all of them, and I'll be there, so it would be great, maybe, I think if we gave the principal a heads up to maybe put it on the agenda, and maybe some other school committee members, would want to come to it.
I just want to say that might not be your biggest problem. Your biggest problem may be the elementary schools in terms of implementation of this. So if you're going to make a decision just upon the high school and the sit team and the high school principal and those folks, that's not going to be your issue. Your issue is going to be the other changes.
But just to hear what things we would face.
Let's get started. See, I mean, there might not even be enough interest there that you would not continue, but
And I'm not suggesting that Jack wouldn't take this on. That's not what I'm saying.
Yeah, in a heartbeat.
I'm not saying that.
Okay, so we're clear.
Well, I think we need to take a serious look at attendance at Rogers, how many people are late. And if it's consistent over years, we do the same thing year after year after year, maybe Dr. Powell's right, maybe we need to change the time, let's do something different. Let's take a look at it.
Again, and I don't want to belabor this, but we did look at that as being an issue, and we got a special bus. We worked really hard with RIPTA to address that issue, special bus that came from the north end down to Rogers to address the youngsters who
And
wanted
it
to
was
leave
empty.
at 9 o'clock.
It was empty.
It was empty, okay? It was empty. So I don't think that's the issue, but if other people do, that's fine too.
My only issue is that I think we should start with the people that are really affected by the change. That's why I suggested a sit meeting. At least start there.
so you guys, that's set up, is it? The sit meeting's set up. Becky's going, Bob, you're going, anybody else want to go?
I might go.
Okay.
So,
Okay, I'll move on then to reports from the superintendent expenditures.
expenditure and revenue reports are listed. Might I continue to strongly suggest that as quickly as possible, this gap of $401,000 is addressed, and we not delay the addressing of this situation. Truth to tell, we are not in compliance with the state law. Joan Tracy wrote that our resolution was to get more money from the city council. I think you need to find that out sooner rather than later, and if you don't get the money, then we need to take next steps.
Well, they know we're interested. The first step is going to be when?
I think they said they were setting up a meeting in December for us to present what we have now. And they would come back with an answer in January.
Why? Why so long?
I don't know. That's what I was told.
I heard that too, but I don't understand why they need to delay it for a 2-month period of time.
Well, it wouldn't be 2 months.
Yeah, it would.
Next month is December.
And then they're going to make a decision in January. That'd be 2 months from when we had our meeting with the liaison. We met with the liaison last week. I don't understand, but maybe there's a reason.
It's not on tomorrow's agenda?
There we go. Maybe that's the reason. Who knows?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I think while we're talking about the things, we're going to have to look at, we have about 10 line items right now that we are over on. So according to our policy, we're going to have to transfer money into those line items, including if it goes to the conference, that one also. But we have, and I'll take an example, let's take like I'll give you one, non-public textbooks. We allocated $5,000. We're now at, maybe that's the end of it, we're now at $8,371. So we're $3,000 over, along with 10, 11 other line items that are over. So by our policy, we have to start addressing these items and either transfer money from one account to another, and maybe we need to do that in December meeting.
I will be talking with Ms. Tracy about all those issues. Bob, as you know, she is not into it.
Aren't we also supposed to report to the city council on those? Did anything, remember?
Yeah, she sent a report to them.
So that we have to point out what we're over on, or?
No, she sends a monthly report on it. I received a copy of it that she sent to Laura Citron. So, again, if you wait too long and the answer is no, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know whether or not it'll be too late to take other
We're all
action.
going to go up to the ACI instead of to the national conference.
Right.
Simple. And then we won't have to pay for anything.
Yeah, your room and board will be free.
Free room and board, Bob.
And meals.
And meals.
Get a good view of the bridge, too. Get in the right room, you get a good view of the bridge.
Right, there we go.
Okay.
Enrollment report,
Enrollment reports are listed.
any significant changes?
No, again, it's up and down, the snapshot, and here's what I think people need to understand. You need to take a look at the whole picture of the Newport School Department for a year and get the average daily membership and the average daily attendance, and that'll give you a picture. At any given point in time, we may be up and down 20, 30, 40 kids, depending upon how the Naval War College comes and goes. I mean, it's certainly always interesting, yes.
I have a question. When I looked at the senior class this year, we have 101 students that attend Rogers and the 8 out-of-district placements. So I know we've always attempted to get 100 kids walk across that stage. We've never wanted to go below it. Do our out-of-district placements walk across our stage, or are we going to have to make sure we...
I'll tell Mrs. Germain that she needs to bring them back to walk across the stage, if that's the issue.
Well, no,
Because I was really close one year,
You were.
okay?
You were.
Really close.
You were.
And we managed to have the kids walk across the stage, so.
Right.
Okay, now, we always want to have 100 kids walk across the stage.
So I guess if you're a senior, make out this year, because it's 101. Don't have to go to school anymore, I'm going to make my diploma.
Yeah.
Good thing we passed that waiver.
There we go. Ooh, ouch, I forgot about that. Okay, moving right along.
Damage report.
Superintendent's, no damage report. I don't see any anyhow. And superintendent's update, is this as listed or what? As reported? I forget.
I move we, as presented.
As presented, thank you.
We accept all the reports as presented.
So moved.
Second,
All in favor?
Aye.
Suggested meeting dates and agenda items, anybody have any requests? I think we've heard
request for...
No more meetings.
Yeah. We'll have a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?